There's a lot of excitement around the Helios ESS. And so we're going to get right into the content here quickly. First, I want to introduce Therese, who is our wholesale manager, whom a lot of you know, but if you're not part of our wholesale program, I will drop that information in the chat. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Everybody's mics and cameras are off. At the end, we will open this up to questions. If you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand and we'll turn your mic on at the end. Throughout the webinar, if you have questions, we have Discover on hand to answer your questions. Please drop those in the chat. There's a Q&A and there's a chat. Please drop them in the chat. That's where I will also drop all relevant links for you to be able to grab throughout the webinar. So just want to give a big thank you to Discover. They're a great partner of ours. We're really excited that they took the time today to be here and talk about their new product. So Therese will introduce them in just a moment, and I will kick it off to Therese to say hello really quickly.
Yes, so thank you. I echo everything that Heather said there. Welcome to the webinar. We're super excited about this new product that Discover is previewing today. Excited to get it in stock. We've had a lot of inquiries about it. I know a lot of you out there are in our installer program already, but as Heather said, if you are an installer and you're not in the program, please take advantage of that link that she's going to put in the chat, I guess. To sign up for our partner programs, get your installer discount on all the Discover products, which we love. And I mean, for anybody who doesn't know who we are, NAW Solar Electric has been around for over 45 years doing solar distribution. We've got a lot of great relationships with great manufacturers like Discover. So we're happy to be part of the solar solution. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt for his presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Therese and Heather. Likewise, we're thrilled to be here. We're super excited about the launch of our new Helios ESS and to have it available through a great partner like NAWS. So thank you for everybody who's joined. I'm going to try and whiz through these slides as quickly as I can without skipping over too many details. I do have Dhruv Malhotra from Discover here with me. He is our product manager for the Helios. So as I'm furiously going through our slides, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and Dhruv will be able to answer things as we go. And then, of course, I'm happy to answer more questions at the end. And I believe I've left us enough time. So without further ado, I will jump right into our slide deck here. So just quickly, just for those of you who don't know who Discover is, and I've realized we're a very old company in a lot of cases, don't necessarily have a brand that's as recognizable as some. So if you don't know us, we've been around for 75 years. We are a Canadian company. We were founded as a distributor, funnily enough, in Lethbridge, Alberta, and I'll spare you all the details of everything on this slide. But we've, over the past number of years, switched from being a lead acid focused company. We've completely separated off from our old roots and our old company that formed Discover Energy Systems, which is solely focused on lithium technologies. And our major focus is in the solar space. So that's what we're really here to talk about today. Just to give you an idea of sort of our mission and values and so on. We take these very seriously and sort of operate our organization sort of centered around these. We do have a global footprint. Our headquarters are, as I say, we're a Canadian company. We're based out of Richmond, British Columbia on the west coast of Canada. We have distribution centers both in Canada, not far from where our office is here in Canada. We also have a warehouse in Memphis, Tennessee, which will certainly service our U.S. partners in a very good way. We do have engineering centers here in Vancouver and in Richmond, and as well as in China, as well as key distribution and sales partners in Europe and in Australia. So for those of you who don't know what we do, so we do service a number of different markets, like I mentioned, the majority of which is in the solar space, both off-grid, whole home backup, residential energy storage. We've expanded our offering now from just residential into the C&I space as well. So we're not here to talk about that today, but certainly happy to go into that on another call another time. We do have products for the recreational market as well as what we call the motive power space. So really material handling is where we've spent a majority of our time, and even into AGVs. So just to give you a brief overview of our solar product here, and we're really here to speak about one of them, but we do have our AES rack mount, of which NOS carries this product today. That is our fully certified to UL 9540. So that is available right now. Helios we'll get more into in detail today. We also have an all-in-one system. It's a modular system designed really to compete with Tesla and the others in that sort of all-in-one residential space. And then we do have a fairly substantial offering now in the C&I space, from a cabinet that's what you see on the screen there, all the way up to containerized solutions that are 5 megawatt. So, but again, that'll be a topic for another day. So what we're here to talk about is the Helios. So the Helios battery, just as a quick overview, it's a 16 kilowatt hour battery, 314 amp hour usable, and 51.2 volt in an LFP cell. So we'll get into a lot more detail here. So getting into some of the specs. So it's a very powerful battery. You have a continuous discharge of 200 amps. Your continuous power is 10.2 kilowatts. We can surge for 10 seconds up to 19 kilowatt with that battery, so it does have a very large surge. And what's really great with this is, much like our rack-mounted batteries, you can parallel in closed loop up to 36 of these together to get to a very large system. And I think I have a typo there. It should be 500. Well, it's 578.8, but round up to 579 kilowatt hour. We do have a 10-year warranty, and we also have an energy throughput guarantee that goes through to 93 megawatt hours over the life of the battery. And of course, the usable battery is much, much longer than that, but that's just the warranty period. And the best part of this, and you'll see this on a number of slides, and again, I certainly won't be putting up installer pricing here. That's something you'll have to go back to Therese to get, but our MSRP on this battery is $3,600. So the battery is also an all climate, so it's both indoor and outdoor rated, so it's an IP65 rating, and it does have a 250 watt heater inside the battery, so it's great for low temperature conditions to keep the battery warm and operating at its optimal temperatures. We also have added some advanced safety, so there's dual aerosol fire suppressors on the inside, and we do have a rapid shutdown using an emergency stop, or the inverter rapid shutdown. So as far as integration is concerned, unlike some of our old batteries, this one is capable of native closed loop, and we'll go into more details on that in some slides further down in the presentation. But it's very much a plug and play, or easy to install, and you'll see again some of the connectors we're using, but this is really designed to be a super quick install, very easy for installers. We do have a conduit box that you can see. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse moving here, but there's a conduit box that we have available for this, that is designed specifically to match up with a SolarC 15 kilowatt inverter. And again, we'll go into a bit more detail on that in further slides, but that makes for a really seamless install with a SolarC 15K inverter. So as far as regulatory is concerned, so all the regulatory you'd come to expect, so 38.3 for shipping, the batteries all have 1973. They currently have the 9540A test complete, and we're in progress on the UL 9540 third edition DC ESS, which means that you'll be able to pair this battery up with all 1741 listed inverters. So that is in progress. Our expectation to have that complete would be summer. So for now, the battery will be available without UL 9540, but it is in the works and will be coming soon. So again, just to go over some high-level specs. So again, the 200 amp continuous discharge, the 10.2 kilowatt hour continuous power, surge to 19 kilowatts. There's integrated busing on the inside of the battery to 400 amps. And again, what we talked about with closed loop paralleling, you can do 36. If you wanted to do open loop, however, it's an unlimited number of batteries in an open loop configuration. So again, the IP65 heating, fire suppression, and the rapid shutdown, and the e-stop. If you can make this out in the picture here, it's a little button on the side of the battery. And there's some measurements for you just to give you an idea of size, but it is quite a large battery. And again, what you'd expect to have in a battery that has that much energy. So on a cost perspective, so this is really from a cost reduction to get us down to the 3,600, or if you really want to think of it, it's $225 a kilowatt hour at retail. So we believe this right now is an industry-leading price. What's nice with this and what's allowed us to get down there is that we're actually utilizing utility-grade cells on the inside. So they're large 320 amp hour cells. In fact, they're the same cells we use in our commercial product. So it's they're super reliable and much less expensive than the 100 amp cells that we're using in our rack mount, hence the price reduction that you're seeing. And again, being able to scale as large as you can in closed loop is very, very nice, not just for large residential applications, but if you're getting into some of the smaller commercial applications, you can do that as well. So again, the whole idea with this battery was to make it as easy to install as possible and flexible, and being able to, install these indoors or outdoors, and to have native communication from the battery through to the inverter. And again, we'll get into more details there. The battery uses and I'll just switch the slide here. We're using the same BMS that we have in our rack mount battery. So this is our 4th generation BMS. So we've been at the BMS development game for just over 10 years now. So we've spent a lot of time and energy on the technology inside the BMS. So we're not using an off-the-shelf BMS that somebody else has done. This is really where all of our technology sits. So designed in Canada, all North American control, and we'll get into some more of that stuff. So from our Gen 3 BMS, for those of you who are familiar with our old 7.4 batteries, we've switched to a contactor-based BMS, which has helped to be a lot more reliable for all of what we're doing, energy in and out. Okay, on to a little bit more about the batteries themselves. So if you see, and I'm sorry, it might be a little dark on the screen here up in the top corners, but you can see it on the positive side here. We have 4 quick connect terminals, so 200 amps for your positive and negative on the opposite sides. There's an integrated bus bar, 400 amps on the inside, and a 200 amp breaker that's accessible to the outside. There's a little cover over it that you get access to keep it watertight. We do have an LCD screen on one side, the on and off button or your rapid shutdown. We'll get into another slide where we dive a little bit deeper into the ports on the side, but there is a USB-C port for diagnostics, and then we have our comms ports on the side there as well for native comms or for utilizing our Lynk product. There's a wall bracket, so you can actually wall mount these as well, so that it sits on the back of the battery and comes in the box. So the accessories, I touched on this earlier. So we do have the conduit box. There's some measurements there for you. The conduit box that we have is designed specifically for the SolarArc 15K. And we'll go into a little bit more about other options that you have for utilizing other inverters here momentarily. Again, I mentioned the wall mount bracket for mounting it on the wall, and we do have some lifting handles available for purchase that help you as an installer to affix to the back of the battery and lift it into place on the wall, and then remove the handles and be able to just throw those in your toolkit and use those over and over again to make installation a little bit easier should you actually wall mount these. Okay, so plug and play connections. So these are a quick connect. So for those of you who are familiar with our rack mounted batteries with the quick connect connections on the front, it's basically the same idea, but just larger. So those connectors just simply click into place, and there's a little button on the side that you press to pull them off. But once they're clicked into place, they're very secure. It's a super fast install to put those on. I also didn't mention this on the other slide, but there's a couple of Gore vents here as well to help with pressure on the inside and keep moisture out of the batteries. So again, here you can get an idea of how we would do, and I'll get into more details on paralleling batteries here with cables in a moment. But that gives you an idea of what you might look like and going into this is right out of the SolarArc manual, going into a SolarArc inverter. So there's two pairs, positive and negative, to go into the side. And again, you can see the connections there. So let's get into wiring diagrams. And just for illustrative purposes, I'm just showing 3 here, but there's certainly, if you get up into the very large paralleling scenarios, I'll show you how to do that with bus bar on one of these slides. But again, you can parallel 36 of these in closed loop, and I'm just going to focus on our kit, our cable kit connections. So the simplest, of course, would be a single battery to single inverter. So I've got some part numbers there, and we'll certainly make these slides available to Naz, who can share these with you later on. And I know that they have all the part numbers up on their website, but if you wanted to take note of these, there's 2 wiring kits for this installation, either in a 1-aught or 2-aught. So you get to choose. They come with the connectors on one end and then a ring terminal that are an M8 size, which is what SolarArc's requested for or what their specifications are on the 15K and all of their inverters, frankly. So all you'd need is one set of either the 2-aught or one set of the 1-aughts. They come with 2 sets of cables in each of those, so 2 positive, 2 negatives. And make for a very quick install. So if you're going to do 2 batteries, then you will need what we just talked about on the other page. So either a one set of 1-aught or 2-aught, and then you need our parallel kit. So the parallel kit comes with 2 positives and 2 negatives, and you can see how they'd be wired together or recommended wiring together. And I just don't have it in the picture here, but also comes with a Cat6 cable for communications between the batteries. So each of the batteries in the box will come with a Cat6 cable for going from the battery to the inverter, but it'll come with an extra cable in the kit for going between the batteries, which is a little longer. So same thing here with a 3 battery install. So again, you'd need to have one of the main sets of kits and then 2 of the parallel kits here. And again, you can see how those would be wired together in parallel. So if you're going to go to a larger system, so 4 or more, I would recommend that you read our manual, which will give you further instructions on this. But you will need to basically do the wiring kits, like I've said. And in this case, I've just put N in here, which would be equivalent to the number of batteries. So you'd need to have, in this case, 4 of these, 4 of those, or 4 of these. And what this part number is here is for the connectors. So we will be selling the connectors. So for those of you who like to crimp your own cables, certainly we sell the kits with the cables already done. But if you want to do your own, then certainly we'll have connectors available for you to crimp your own cables and do your own cable lengths and so on, which you would need or would probably prefer to do in this scenario where you're running to either a bus bar or a combiner. So again, not to belabor the point, but yes, you can get to very large systems with these batteries in closed loop. Again, not to belabor the point, but if you wanted to do open loop, then of course you can go much larger than these. Not sure if what the application might be to go much larger than that. You should probably be looking at commercial batteries at that point, but you can do it. So these systems are designed to scale very easily and very quickly. So let's look at the communications. So I've mentioned on a number of occasions now, native communications. So all that means is you do not need to use our Lynk 2 to connect to an inverter. So if you're going to do that, not use the Lynk 2, you would use the CAN port, which is this one right here, if you can see my mouse moving. You would use that and connect that directly into the inverter. Now, if you're doing multiple batteries together, then you would go, your one from the inverter would come from the CAN port, and then connecting the batteries together in parallel for the communications, you'd use the Lynk ports in between the other batteries in the system. So again, you can kind of see how you would do that here in this diagram. And each of the batteries will actually in the box come with a terminal resistor. So you will need to put a terminal resistor in the last battery in one of the two Lynk ports to basically terminate the communications. So you can do native communications, and I've put the list of inverter companies down there just for an interest perspective. So with Solar, Victron, Lux, Solus, Doya, and Growatt inverters. So if you want to take full advantage of communications, my recommendation would be to continue to use our Lynk 2 gateway. And we'll speak a bit more about the gateway further down with why you might use this. But with the Lynk 2, you would configure this a little bit differently. So you would not be using the CAN port in this configuration. You would be using the Lynk ports. So much like we showed before, you'd go battery to battery to battery with a terminal resistor in the last one. You'd go from your last Lynk port into the Lynk 2, and then from the Lynk 2 into the inverter. And what this will do is it will actually open up communications with Schneider Electric, which you do, and we're actually testing native communications right now with Schneider, so that may be able to be done through their Insight devices. But for now, to go directly into the inverter, we would recommend that you use the Schneider, use the Lynk 2 gateway. One thing that you'd need to consider, if you're doing the native communication, you are going to need to order cables that, to the different pin out connections from the batteries to the inverters. And I believe NOS stocks different Cat 6 cables or Cat 5 cables with the different pairs and the twisted to the right pin out configurations. Of course, you could always do your own if you are happy with crimping your own communications cables. But if you use the Lynk 2, you spare yourself having to do any of that work. All of that is done inside the Lynk by changing the pin-out connections through little jumpers, and we have a whole set of videos on how to do that on our YouTube channel. But that does make that very, very easy with using the Lynk 2. And then, of course, you open up a whole bunch of additional functionality using the Lynk 2, which is having the ability to use our free Lynk Access software, which is a Windows-based software. It's a free download from our website, which allows you to get into the diagnostics and pulling battery data logs, etc., from the Lynk 2. It also allows you to use the Lynk. If you were to mount that on a wall, there's an SOC display on the front of the unit. It's kind of hard to see in the picture here, but there's just little LEDs as a very basic SOC. Of course, the Helios has the screen on the side that also displays that information. The biggest one that most people are unaware of with the Lynk 2 is that we have 3 programmable relays on the side of that unit, and I'll get into more details on what you can do with those. You also have a CAN bus out. You can do firmware updates through the Lynk, which allows you to download firmware into the Lynk 2 device, and then it daisy chains it out to all of the other batteries in one shot, as opposed to having to plug into each battery individually. And there is an SD memory card slot in there to allow for collection of more data over more time. Probably the neatest thing, which has just been launched commercially, is the Lynk Cloud. So with a Lynk device, there's an Ethernet port in the bottom corner right here that you can plug an internet connection in and then enable our Lynk Cloud software to run, where you can then monitor and manage functionality of the Lynk and the batteries remotely from any internet connection through a web browser. So that is now commercially available. It's pretty exciting in the sense that there's a homeowner view, and then as an installer, you can actually add every single one of your installations into a single view and go through. And again, I'm happy to come back and we can do a more specific training on this, but we'll allow installers to get a global view of all of your installations everywhere. And probably the neatest function of all that is you can actually set up alerts and alarms that alert you to a whole host of different things. Whether batteries are turned off, low SOC, there's a whole list of different things in the software that will allow you to get notifications proactively with things that are happening in your homeowner systems. So let's talk a little bit more about the configuration here with the SolarC inverter. So in this configuration with the conduit box, and you can see the back here, when you open the box and pull a conduit box out, you'll notice that there's an angled piece on the inside. And what that's allowing for is air to get in the back here, because all of the 15K SolarC's cooling is all in the back of the inverter. So that's why you see this cutaway and angled thing in here. What's really nice is if you do decide to use the Lynk 2, there's actually a really nice little mounting spot on the inside of the conduit box where you can mount the Lynk 2 so it's out of the weather and tucked away inside the conduit box, keeping for a very clean install. The sides of the conduit boxes are just blank, so you have the ability to punch or drill into the sides of that to run conduit in between. So if you're doing paralleled systems, you can run your conduit in between the conduit boxes to do all your cable runs and your comms wires, so that it's a very clean, where there's really literally no wires showing. There is a lock on the side here as well, so you can lock the conduit box up so that little prying fingers can't get on the inside of there. But it's designed to take all of the cabling from the battery through the conduit box, and at the top of the conduit box is actually matched up with all the knockouts for the 15K SolarC. So it perfectly lines up. It makes for a very, very nice installation. And again, if you decide to do your native communication, again, it does come through with that Cat6 cable, and you can just run it through and go to the inverter. So, to make a really clean install with parts that you can just buy off the shelf, you can do anywhere between a 16 and a 48 kilowatt hour system with all of the wiring that we went through on the previous slides. Of course, you can do much larger systems, but just as an off-the-shelf purchase, you can make a really nice, really clean install for a very, very good price. So we can also mentioned all the inverters. So just to give you an idea here with Victron. So Victron product makes, again, very easy to scale for large projects that you're doing. If you're going to use the Victron, and I know our pictures here showing with our conduit box, but if you could imagine, instead of using conduit box, you can use a generic wire trough along the top there, and you just cut out the bottom of the wire trough to match up with the top of the battery, and then run all your conduit out the top and run all your wire through the cable trough. So again, can make for a very clean, very nice install using off-the-shelf wire trough, which is great. And again, all of the communication that you can get through the device, either natively or through the Lynk 2, to marry up with all of Victron's gear through their servo and everything else. So very nice installs that you can get to very large systems. And I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Schneider Electric. I know Nas has some fantastic deals right now on the XW. So if you're looking for a very affordable system, I would highly recommend that you take a look at the XW system with the Helios. That would make for a very well-priced system for your homeowners. Again, I'm just showing this with our conduit here, but again, you could use any cable trough and run it up into the PDPs and the inverters with the Schneider Electric system. Again, very easy to scale for very, very large projects or small ones as well. So you can't forget the small ones either. So installation options. So we talked a little bit about the wall bracket on the back of the battery. So you can wall mounted or floor mounted, in which you have a ground supported option. The other way that you can install these is either a shelf or rack mount for somebody that wants to build or make their own shelving or racking and actually stack the batteries up as opposed to running them wide along the wall. So again, I would recommend, if you're going to install them in this configuration, you want to certainly have access to the power button on one side and have access to the breaker on the other side. So I would not put the feet facing outwards, because it would be a very difficult reach in to actually get to access to either the power button or to the breaker. So I would suggest that you have the top of the battery facing out if you're running it into the wall, but you can lay them down on their backs like that and in an install as well. So here's a list of part numbers, and I've just put the MSRPs on here. Again, if you sign up on the NAS portal, of course, you'll see that they've got some fantastic pricing for installers on the website there as well. But just to give you a quick list of all the part numbers that we've spoken about today with the cabling, there's the part number here for the handles that we spoke about for the lifting handles, and our Lynk 2 gateway part number there as well. So what do you expect when you get one of these? So I just wanted to show what the box looks like, and we'll go through a little bit more detail here on this. So here's a picture of a single unit. So they come effectively with their own palletized sort of solution at the bottom that you can get a forklift or a pallet jack under to lift the batteries up. If you happen to buy more than one and you get them on a pallet, then of course they'll come stacked the way you see them here. And you'll open the box, and I'll show these in another slide here, but there's a bunch of rope that are already attached to the batteries to help you lift the battery out of the box. So what's in the box? When you open it, you'll have the battery module itself. The wall bracket is already attached to the back of the battery. There's cover panels. So we didn't really show those clearly in the pictures, but they're the cover panels that cover both your positive and negative terminals. So once you stick your cabling on, you'd put those cover panels on to cover them all up to keep it clean. There'll be one RJ45 and one network terminator. So basically everything that you need to do a native installation is in the box, minus the cables, because we've left that up to you on how you actually, which size, and whether you want to buy ours or crimp your own. So the unboxing ropes, so you'll see those there, those orange ropes. So when you lift it out of the box, you get one person on either end. You lift the battery up and then tilt it up onto its feet using those ropes. So we've made it very easy to get the battery out of the box. And then here's some pictures of the lifting handles, so you can see a bit more of a close-up here. It's like a little key cutout, so they slide in. These have slid down, pardon me. They've slid down on the handles here, but when you lift up, they would seat down in the bottom portion of the lifting handles there, which then you lift it into place, and then they slide out nice and easy after you've attached it onto the wall brackets. And again, we'd recommend that once you have things installed, you'd actually cut the ropes off the batteries themselves. But you could lift the battery up using those as well if it just makes it a little more awkward. So the conduit box, when it comes packaged in its own box. So when you open it up, this is basically what you see. You can sort of very faintly make out the knockouts. There are some covers for those knockouts that come in the box, as well as the key for the latch on the side of the conduit box all come in the box. So let's get into Lynk 2, because think this is really what unlocks, as I mentioned, the cloud, which is what I think is really what unlocks a lot of the power of what we do. So we went through this slide already, so I'm just going to skip over this one and get more into the relays. So what we're finding a lot of installers are doing is they're utilizing one of the relays for an auto gen start. So if you happen to be doing an off-grid install with a generator, or even an on-grid one with a generator, you can utilize the Lynk to be effectively your auto gen start. So when you come into your software, whether it's the Lynk Access software through the Windows PC, or you can also do this through the cloud, you will select your relays, and this is basically a screenshot of what it looks like. So you can pick, there's a drop down from relay 1, 2, or 3. You'll choose your profile, and there's a number of different profiles in here. So we'll talk about another one here on the next slide. But you'd select your generator start, stop. And then you'd come in here and you'd select when you want to activate or deactivate your auto gen start. So you can set on SOC a percentage and then with a delay. So my recommendation to most people is set your delay to 5 seconds. These all come they all come zeroed out as a default. So I would do 5 seconds, because of course, if you find that you've run a surge and it dips below 10% just briefly, you don't necessarily want the generator to start right away. So give it a bit of a delay on the activation, and you can also do that on the deactivation as well. So just in this example, it'll trigger at 10% SOC and it'll deactivate at 70% SOC. The other thing you can do is you can also set a maximum runtime, so that you can toggle this on or off. It comes defaulted off, but you can set, run the generator for no longer than, and again, you can set the number of hours and minutes, which would override this. So it would actually, if you hadn't reached 70% SOC by the time 3 hours had elapsed, it would shut off. And I'll talk about a scenario where this comes handy here in a second. So, if you want to be a good neighbor, you can set quiet times on here as well. So again, you can set the times between, and so in this case, it's 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And again, these you can customize to be whatever you like. It does come defaulted off, so you do have to turn this on. And there's an ability here as well to exercise a generator. So if you're sitting in the middle of summer, as an example, you got lots of sun, lots of harvest, you're charging your batteries through your PV array all the time, and the generator never comes on, it is always a good idea to exercise the generator and just have it turn on and run for a period of time, which you can customize here. So in this case, we've selected every 4 weeks on a Sunday at 1 p.m. and running for 15 minutes. So again, this is all configurable. You can decide what you want to do. This, again, does come defaulted off, so you'd need to turn that on. So where I find this maximum runtime, just as I'll give you a for instance, where this becomes a really powerful tool, utilizing the Lynk as opposed to using an inverter AGS. So as a for instance, you've got your PV array, it's set up, and you're consistently running out of, or you're running down to say a 10% SOC. Sorry, I'm bouncing on slides here. You're running down to an SOC of 10% at say 5 in the morning. Sun comes up at 8 in the morning. You, of course, don't want to run your generator to 70% because then you're not utilizing your PV. So you want it to run for 3 hours. Sun comes up at 8 o'clock in the morning. The generator shuts off and your PV array takes over. Where it becomes really interesting is, let's just say, sun does come up at 8, but you happen to have a really stormy day where there's no PV harvest because you're in a stormy day and the rain's coming down or the snow's coming down. Then what will happen is the activation trigger will then trigger back on again at 10%, and it will run for 3 hours again. So we'll just go into that cycle of running every 3 hours, which again, hopefully the day clears up, the storm goes away, and you can then harvest back from PV. So that becomes a really interesting way to manage systems and potentially reduce the use of a generator in some of your installations, save on fuel. So another thing that you can do which again is something not everybody is aware that you can do with a Lynk, is you can actually use it for load control. So again, all configurable. You'd select which relay. So, you know, if you used relay 1 for your generator as an example, you'd pick either relay 1 or sorry, relay 2 or 3. You'd pick your SOC triggers again. So, you know, in this case, we're showing, you know, activated at 60% and deactivated at 25%. So this is where you might say, okay, I want to shed an EV charger as an example. So if I'm down to 25% SOC, I don't want the EV charger to be able to charge using the batteries. So you could use this relay to shed that load. Or it could be an HVAC system or a hot tub or, you know, any sort of big load that you know you don't want to necessarily have sucking your batteries dry. So you can use that load control feature again to and program again. All your thresholds are fully programmable, so you can decide what you want to do. So again, Lynk Cloud. So this is where Lynk really becomes extremely powerful in the sense of being able to not have to roll a truck to go out and actually see what's happening with a system. So in my opinion, it's worth the price of admission buying a Lynk 2 just to have the feature of being able to know before you go. So being able to log into your homeowner's system or to your own system for that matter when you're not there. So if it could be a remote cabin, and understand what's happening in that system before you get there. So whether a battery is dropped off. So if you have multiple batteries, it will tell you if one's disconnected for some reason. You can get right into cell level details and be able to see what's going on with SOC charge. There's a don't have the screens here, but there's a whole bunch of data that you can go backwards, back to the first date that you plugged the unit into the cloud, and you'll be able to monitor all that. All of those relay settings that we just looked at, you'll be able to configure all of that stuff through the remote configuration. And so change the triggers, change your set points and so on. Again, you don't need to be on site to make those adjustments. You can do all that stuff. And I think from a, you know, again, diagnosing issues, being able to look and see what's happening at the site before you go out there becomes hugely powerful to understand whether in fact you have a problem with the battery, or is it actually something through an inverter, which of course you can access through all of their own platforms. But it gives you that very powerful tool. Again, Lynk Cloud, it's hosted on American servers, so all of this is exclusively hosted in the US. So no need to be worried about any of this stuff going over to overseas. It is all contained here in North America. And last but not least, we have a ton of resources for Helios as well as all of our product online. So if Heather and Therese will certainly send you guys a PDF version of this. These all have links you can click on to get to all of these resources. We're adding resources for Helios all the time. I know Naz is in the process of filming some product videos on the Helios. Today, we're also going to have our own. But things like the manual, we have a purchasing guide here that is really designed to help you. Again, we've gone through all those wiring configurations and which part numbers you need. So we actually have a purchasing guide in case you forget. You can download that and just help you to get a right bill of materials when you're actually ordering product. We have some stuff here that can help you if you're trying to sell a product to a homeowner. You can download these sell sheets and data sheets on our website, as well as a whole host of other things that you can access through this bottom link as well. So with that, that's all I have for all of you today. So I guess we can open this up for questions. I can sort of see out of the corner of my eye there's been a number of questions in chat. So Heather and Therese, if you want to open it up to questions, let's go for it.
Yeah, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I will turn your mic on. The little raise hand is at the top of your menu. Or drop it in chat.
No such thing as stupid questions either, guys, so ask away.
All right, we've got one here.
All right.
Did I get your 1 second? All right, Mike, you can turn your mic on. I might be able to unmute you. Your mic is enabled, Mike. All you have to do is unmute yourself.
That's Mike Snell, just in case, I think. Correct, Therese?
Yes.
In case
All
you're
right.
struggling, you just click the little mic icon in the top menu bar there to unmute.
Yeah. Daniel Snyder also has a question. Daniel, your mic has also been enabled. You just need to unmute yourself and you'll be able to ask your question.
Hi. We got a job. We wanted to combine 10 of the Helios and 3 Solar 15Ks.
Mhm.
And it seems like the only way to do it electrically is to use the Midnight 2000 amp combiner to get all those different cables to meet in the middle. And the concern my electrical engineer has is to all that cabling in the gutter has a D rate. It's not in free air anymore. And
Mhm.
he tends to want to push it up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 350 mil KCM because of when you're getting up to 2000 amp hours. So do you have an engineered solution for 10 batteries that you know is going to work in that application?
Therese,
For
I'm not
10?
sure if Noz, I'm sure Noz can certainly help provide some of the detail that you need, but maybe Teresa, do you want to take a stab at answering that, and then we can certainly follow up?
I mean, I'm not an engineer. Daniel works with our lead engineer, Benjamin, on
Yeah.
projects like this, and Benjamin is off today, so he's not in the webinar. But yeah, I know Daniel and Benjamin have already spoken about this project, so I think Daniel was just trying to see if you had any other suggestions, because I'm guessing that what our suggestion was that MNBCB 2000 that he mentioned.
Yeah, that will work. I think it's great if it's designed up. I'm just mentioning it to you, Matthew, just so you can
Yeah.
keep it in mind, because that's what happens right away. We go on these, with a permit, we got to prove it out all the way through the code, and so
Sure.
it's just when you got a lot of wires in that gutter, it starts heating up. It looks
Yep.
like because the gutter's vented, that might help, but
Yep.
we're just trying to make it easy to put 10 together. That's all. Just trying to make it. So any
Listen,
input is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Daniel, we can certainly help you with that. So it might be something we can get more specific offline and work with our team and with Therese and Benjamin and help you guys get a solution that will work, and then it becomes repeatable for others as well. So we'd certainly help you with that.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just dropped a message to Benjamin, Daniel, so he will be in touch. We also had a question dropped in Q&A. Can the BMS be field replaced by an installer?
We are working on that now. So the battery was designed to be able to have the BMS replaced in the field. So the answer is yes. We don't have a BMS part number today, but we will have something by the time you guys get the batteries in at the warehouse at Noz there and out into the field. So the answer to that is yes.
Great, thank
Our
you.
hope is that you never have to do that, of course.
All right. Mike Snell, if you still have a question, you can drop it in Q&A or chat. And it looks like we may have another one.
See a comment, a bus getter is an option for eliminating the quantity of cable in the getter trough. Yes. That is definitely an option. I've seen, it's funny, I have seen some It wasn't certainly with the Helios, but I've seen it with our 7.4s where installers have actually made their own busing through gutter and actually run cables, shorter lengths of cables directly up into a bus and then run a longer bus through the gutter. So Nick, that's a great observation. And yes, I've certainly seen that done many times. Anything else?
There's a question in the chat. On your first slide, I saw H2B2. What is the altitude rating? I'm in Colorado, above 2,000 meters, and does it work with Solar Edge?
The H2B2 can be AC coupled. So yes, on that, it is a NEMA 4X system. So it is indoor outdoor rated, and you shouldn't have any troubles at the elevation that you're at. Hopefully that answers the question.
And I do have Mike Snell's question. The question
Okay.
is, can the product connect to Schneider XW and XW Pro and SW products?
With the Lynk 2 device, you can. So in the Lynk 2, when you go to configure that, and we actually have a video on our YouTube channel that shows you exactly how to do that. But yes, you can. So it'll go directly into the XW and the SW, either through CAN or through the ZAN bus.
If you guys can make sure I get that link when I email out the webinar and
For
the
sure.
deck, I'll do that video link as
For
well.
sure. Yep.
There was another question. Can you explain the fire suppression system a bit more?
I'm going to let Dhruv answer that question because he's much more intimate with the fire suppression than I am. Go ahead, Dhruv.
Yes. So there's two fire suppression packs essentially placed above the cell block, just below the BMS. And what it does is, in case of a thermal runaway event, it will just slow down fire propagation from cell to cell. Essentially, it's also enclosed in a I forget the gauge of the steel, but enclosed in a steel case. So what it does is really just slows down any thermal events if they happen.
I think that's a important distinction to make. So any sort of fire suppression systems that you see in there are not designed to extinguish anything, because of course it's a chemical reaction. It's designed to slow things down so that it allows human beings to exit their dwellings a little, with being a little safer.
Hopefully that answered the question. If not, I'm happy to take it offline and answer in detail.
We didn't talk about availability, so let me maybe answer that question. Nobody's
That's
asking.
great.
So the products are arriving in our warehouse would be the first week of March, and then will be turned around and shipped off to Nas, who has ordered plenty of them to begin with. So they should have inventory in their warehouse, I would suggest, by the second week of March.
Awesome. We also have a follow-up question from Dave about fire suppression. Is it a physical barrier? So the fire suppression, is it a physical barrier?
I was just going to reply to that in the chat. So it's not a physical barrier per se. It's a chemical that's released once a temperature gets above a certain height, above a certain temperature. And I'm happy to answer it in more detail and give you some more technical specifications offline, if that makes sense. So like Matthew said, it doesn't extinguish the fire. It really slows down the propagation from cell to cell using chemicals.
Yeah, it's an aerosol.
It's an aerosol, yes.
I'll make sure you have Dave's email address as well to answer any follow-up
Awesome.
questions, and I'll connect Dave with our team as well. We did have another
you can
question.
put Dave directly in touch with me too if you need to, Heather. I'm happy to field any questions directly as well. So, and that can include Dhruv. No problem.
We had one more question come in from Curtis regarding the heater function. Would you recommend building a large insulated battery box around it to keep current drain for the heater to a minimum?
Listen, you can always put things, it is an outdoor rated battery, but of course, it's steel. So ambient temperatures are certainly going to affect it. So building an enclosure of some sort that would, go around the batteries that's insulated and so on is never a bad idea in a very cold climate. We should probably talk a little bit about the heater itself. So the heater is designed to use the power or the energy of the battery down to 50% SOC. So it will self-consume to keep the heater running down to 50% SOC. Below 50% SOC, you would need to have an external charge source applied to the battery. So either a generator or PV or whatever your charge source is, that would then keep that heater running. The heaters are at the bottom of the battery blocks, and so the heat rises through the enclosure itself on the inside. But again, what we've seen plenty of times are sticking batteries in some sort of an enclosure that's insulated just to help keep the battery from being exposed to the ambient weather conditions outside. So absolutely, you can do that if that's something that your application warranted.
If I could just add to that, the heater does turn off at 8 degrees Celsius. It's a 250 watt heater that warms. You make sure the cell block is warm until 8 degrees, and it'll automatically shut off.
Yeah, that's Celsius because we're Canadian, not an eagle feather measurement.
Regarding inventory, Matt, are you going to have some of these at your Memphis warehouse as well? Are you going to?
We will. Yeah. So I think our initial shipment, so that first shipment of March 1st is already sold out. So you guys at NOS will have effectively a container volume of product. And then we have another shipment coming in, I believe it's a week or week and a half after, and we just have a continuous supply coming. So it's we don't anticipate having any shortages of products at this stage. So we're certainly happy to keep NOS well supplied with batteries as you guys order them. So that I really hope won't be an issue. We certainly will have enough inventory to satisfy. So
yeah.
Awesome. Yep. We did have one more question come in. How much does a single battery weigh, and what is the depth of discharge recommended?
Two good questions. I didn't talk about the weight at all. It is a heavy battery, so it weighs 280 pounds. So it is a hefty beast, which is why we have the lifting handles and so on to help with that. Now, again, you can use whatever lifting method you want. So, if you had a dolly or some sort of a jack that you can lift and lower batteries with, you're certainly free to use any lifting mechanism to help you out with that. And sorry, the second question was depth of discharge. So you can drain it down to 100% depth of discharge, and so it is a 320 amp hour cell inside, and you saw at the beginning of the slide 314. So that's the usable. So we've already accounted for that. So you can drain down to the full 314 amp. To get you down to the 100% depth of discharge. However, and I'll use this as a bit of a caveat, our warranty statement is in fact down to, and Drew, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically a daily discharge every day down to 80% DOD once a day for a year. Done a full drain to 80% DOD once a day for an entire year over a 10-year span.
Yep, that's exactly correct, Matthew. And like you said, you can do 100% depth, 100% depth of discharge. We just ask, and it's still in a warranty. If it goes below 10%, you do need to charge it within 24 hours, and that's just to preserve the cells and make sure the cells aren't going to be damaged.
Yeah, good point, Drew. That's very true. And that's, quite frankly, that's the case with any lithium battery. You should be doing that. It's not just a Discover product. Just good practice. And just to, in case anybody's thinking about what about storage? So how do I store a battery? So, we have an awful lot of end users up in places like Alaska where they may only be there in the summer and then leave things over winter months as an example. So our recommendation for storing batteries would be to store a battery at 95% SOC. So charging it to 100% is actually not a good idea for storage. You should drain it down 5% and leave it at 95% if you're going to leave it for any length of time. Another good
Awesome.
practice.
Well, we are
Good.
right at the top of the hour. If anybody has one last question, throw it in Q&A or chat. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Again, we will email out the recording of the webinar, the slide deck, any relevant links that'll be helpful to you, our team's contact information if you want to ask more questions of our team, our partner program information, all that good stuff will be included. I will send that out early next week to everyone. Wanted to thank Discover again. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Matthew, for being here. Thanks, Therese. We're really glad to have this partnership. We're very excited about this product. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great